Everybody, just want to go over a few quick housekeeping things before we get started. So just make sure that while the presentation is happening, you stay on mute unless you have a question, just to help with any background noise. Video is optional, but we recommend turning on your cameras just to make it a little bit more interactive. If you do have any questions during the presentation, feel free to use the raise your hand icon, or if you have a longer question, type it into the chat and we'll try our best to get to them as quick as possible. If anybody has dialed in today, be sure that you email Sue to let her know that you were on so we can get you your PDR credits. Other than that, I'll let Kevin introduce himself and kick it off.
Thank you, Cassandra. Good morning, everyone. And I want to thank you for taking your time to hop on and listen to me this morning. This is really what I'm going to be talking about today, is investing in your staff, and also kind of giving you my thoughts and opinions of how I see the industry evolving and how we need to evolve as an industry and professionals to basically help make our lives a little bit better, and especially those of the assistants, because I've been in this business for over 25 years, and the long hours, the low pay, all that type of stuff has been prevalent in our industry. And quite frankly, I think we've seen a lot of people coming into the industry right now, but it's retaining those great ones. And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, again, I've only ever worked in the golf industry. When I was 15 years old, I started a course called Fox Chase Golf Club, working for a guy named Ben Witter. Worked at Heidelberg for a guy named Dave Elliott, Bent Creek for Brett Upper. I caddied at Stonewall for a year. And then I went into the TPC Avenue, the corporate world for a couple of years. I was at TPC at Avenue and TPC at Prestantia in Sarasota, Florida. Got too hot for me down there. Went to Caves Valley, worked for Dennis Sadisher for 7 years. And then I've been at Kings Creek Country Club as the director of golf for the last 18 years. I went through the Penn State PGM program, which I know we've got Brian and Eric on the call, so thank you guys for joining. It was probably the best 4 years of my life until I got married, is what I tell my wife. I've had a fantastic experience. I've worked for a lot of old school golf professionals, and I'm going to share kind of how my thoughts have evolved over the years, but worked with many interns, many assistant golf professionals. I've seen a lot of them either stay in the business and are great head golf professionals, but I've also seen a lot of people leave this industry, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, I would say. I've seen the, I want to say work ethic. I thought it was work ethic. It kind of changed in the last 10, 15 years, where I thought potentially some of the people that were working for me were getting a little bit soft, right? Asking for, gosh, how dare you ask for a weekend off, or you need to go to this wedding and we've got member tournament, or something like that. I grew up that you weren't allowed to do that, right? It was, you got to work at the golf club. And my thoughts on that have definitely changed. And I think COVID brought that out, right? So COVID, we started seeing that we worked harder than ever. We were at the golf course all the time. And I've never been so burnt out in my entire life from that year. Everybody else was at home or working remotely. They had a lot of family time, right? So family time became kind of a big thing. And that work-life balance, I started really hearing about that work-life balance. And I think that's really changed. And we started evolving. I had my staff working 6 days a week, and really not having tournaments off, weekends off, and they were burnt out. And I started really talking to my staff, and they're like, man, this is killing me, right? We're busy. We're doing 31,000 rounds at our 18-hole private golf course, which is a lot. We're running 145 events and a year. That includes league play. And yeah, they're burnt out. So it's not that they were soft or they didn't have great work ethic. When they were here, they were busting their butt, but they needed that time off. So we started I started modifying the schedule to where they were 1 week, five days, the other week, 6 days, to eventually where we went to a 5-day work week and working 8 or 9 hours a day. I started seeing my hours though increase because I had to cover their hours. It's not like we were hiring anybody else. And I'll tell you, our staffing level, again, we're a private facility. We have 800 members at our course. And we have myself, the director of golf. We have 3 assistant golf professionals. We have a director of instruction, and we have 3 individuals who work part-time in the golf shop. So that is our current staff. That was our staff before COVID when we were doing 19,000 rounds a year. And that's our staff after COVID doing 31,000 rounds a year. A couple things that we were able to do operationally that maybe not a lot of clubs can do, but the superintendent needed golf course access. So we decided to close on Tuesdays, and we are fully closed. I mean, we don't do outings on Tuesdays. The superintendent has the golf course, and that is his day. We will do outings on Mondays or Wednesdays. So unfortunately, it does impact member play. We do, for 11 weeks, we do a 9-hole men's league at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, but that's really coming in for a few hours, and that's about it. We also installed GPS on our carts, and that allowed us to monitor pace of play from the golf shop. Okay. We're not where before we were always out on the golf course. When you have 200 rounds, I've got 1 person on the front 9, 1 on the back 9. And for me, the professional staff did that, monitoring of the pace of play, because those are tough conversations. So installing that GPS allowed us to change that. So I'd say really starting in COVID year through now, I started working with my general manager and talking about compensation. And our assistants were making anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year on salary. All right. And I kept harping that we need to pay more, that we're not paying enough. If their child was graduating college and going into an industry, would they be satisfied that their child was making $40,000 a year and basically living paycheck to paycheck, right? But where we were hurting was when we come up against club benchmarking and or even the PGA compensation surveys, it was showing that we're paying right in line with where we should, right? So it came back as small percentage increases. The finance committee, anytime that I proposed a larger increase, they came back and said, wow, your percentages, it's too high of a percentage to make a change. And I was just battling against this data that they had, and I didn't have any different data to show anything different, right? So I just knew that we were going to be in trouble one day. And I told my general manager, I said, listen, we're fortunate. We have 3 assistants right now, and they're great assistant golf professionals. And they had housing before our housing boom. Down at the beach, we had a huge housing boom. It's insane. And I kept telling my general manager, we're okay now, but until when one of these assistants leave, we are going to be forced to make major changes. Because we haven't made incremental changes over the years, we're going to be forced to make major changes. And in the summer of 2023, last summer, I had an assistant come to me and say, I'm leaving the business. After Labor Day, he was going to leave. He was going into insurance. And quite frankly, his wife said, we are not starting a family with you in this business. Even though we were now working 5 days a week, we had a flexible schedule, weekends off. It was still, low pay, very low pay. And so now the challenge was we've got to seriously increase our pay with these assistants. I had another assistant tell me that he was thinking about leaving to go for a higher paying job. And I had my last assistant basically tell me that his parents has said they'd pay for him to go back to school and find a different profession. So quickly, I was almost out an entire staff. And it was like panic attack, right? So I went to it was now a new general manager. Okay. General managers kind of change every 2 to 3 years, it seems. So I went to this new general manager and talked about it. He went to the the board, and they came back and said, man, we're right in line with club benchmarking. You know, we're not going to increase. So, man, I don't think I've ever been as ticked off as I was at that moment, right? Stressed out. I'm going to lose my staff. We're going to have to hire. I'm not going to be able to hire anybody, right? So I went back to my office and I literally sat down right at the computer and I told my assistants, I said, don't, you know, just give me about 2 to 3 hours. And I just typed, right? So I was typing down all my thoughts. I went home that night, poured a little bit of whiskey and sat by the fire pit and just, you know, again, thought and wrote down every single thought that was going through my head. And basically what it came down to is they're looking at data. I've shown no data. I need to show data supporting why I think we should make a change, right? Because I'm battling club benchmarking. They see a certain number. While I know and believe that it needs to be more, I had nothing to show them. All right, I am going to try to share my screen. First slide here. Let's see, entire screen. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so the first thing I did was I knew they couldn't afford to live in our area. So what I did is I called a bunch of apartment complexes, and I found out in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, that, and I called places about 30 minutes away. Okay. And what I was looking for was any available apartment complex. And what I found was the average apartment complex was right around $1,800 a month for a single bedroom apartment. And I think everybody should be able to afford a single bedroom apartment. We shouldn't say, hey, you need to live, you know, go find a room to rent in somebody's house or anything like that. That's not fair, right? Now, apartment complexes will not rent an apartment to you if it is not showing, if you're showing that your your apartment is more than 30% of your gross wages, you may not be able to rent that apartment. I've seen some now say it can be as high as 35% of your gross pay, but it's really more 30% is what I've seen. So I took that 1,800, I multiplied it out to 12 months, and basically that's $21,600 a year going right to rent. That's not including utilities, food, anything like that, right? So that was the first number that I figured out. And when you divide that by 0.3, you get $72,000. So my staff would not be able to rent an apartment unless they were making $72,000 or more a year in our area. If you do it by the 0.35, it's 62,000 roughly. So I need to be in that range. It needed to be in that range for a minimum. And I'm gonna stop sharing here for a second. Can everybody see me again? So I knew I needed to be in that range. So that was the first piece of data that I wrote down. Next one, I went onto the internet and went on to bankrate.com, and it showed that the starting salaries for a college graduate in 2023 were going to average around $58,000 a year, their first year out of college. Okay. In 2024, just so you know, they predicted those graduates were going to start earning their first year after college $68,500. That's an average. Okay. I was well below that. I was about $14,000 off of that number. I also went online. I started searching articles, right? Staffing challenges in hospitality industry. I wasn't looking at just golf. We're in the hospitality industry. So I got about 10 different articles that really supported my thoughts and just my initial thoughts. And again, I highlighted what our assistant golf professionals do for this club. We run over 145 events annually, play 31,000 rounds. If I was to have all three of my assistants leave, their experience would be so dramatically different. It's not even funny. I can't do this alone. And I basically even put that down. I said, I cannot do this if it's by myself. And I would start looking for another job because I would not be able to hire anybody under that number to work at the club. So I went back to the general manager with all this data, right? He went to the board, came back immediately, sat down in my office and said, all right, we're going to give each assistant an immediate $15,000 a year raise. And I want you to post a position for $65,000, a starting position. Okay. So I accomplished my goal because I came back with data. So data, I started realizing, is extremely important in this industry and fighting any battle that you have. You can talk till you're blue in the face, but until you show them data, they're not going to listen. In 2019, when I was looking for 2 assistants, I received 4 applications. Last year, I received 23 applications. And just to note, only 3 were PGA professionals. So if you're trying to hire a PGA professional, you need to even hire even more, which they should. They've gone through all the schooling. They've gone, you know what it's like to go through that process. So while I was extremely happy that we were able to increase our wages and that we were going to be okay and I wasn't going to have to move, I really took some time to reflect, and I started having conversations with other golf professionals in the industry. And I just really started thinking that data is power, right? So what data do we need to help move the needle in our industry? Just like Jim Smith Jr.'s payroll per round data, right? So that's very powerful data. But how can we use it? How can we make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and showing that to our boards, to make a move? Your local housing data, you need to figure that out, right? So if you're posting a job and you're getting 0 applications or 1 or 2, you are off the mark. You're not attracting them to their area. And believe me, they're looking at what it would cost to live in that area. If they're looking at your posting, they're looking at that. And if they can't afford it, you have 0 shot. And I actually think that, and I'm sure you're the same, many great golf professionals that have left this industry, right? So I think that we also need to be comparing what industries they're leaving for. We need to figure out, are they going into insurance? Are they going into sales? What are they doing? And what kind of compensation are they making in those other industries? And we need to also be comparing that, because guess what? Club benchmarking, PJ compensation data, if it's showing low wages and we're comparing low wages to low wages, guess what? The answer comes back that we should be paying low wages. And that's right now what our board, our membership, our owners of the clubs are looking at and seeing. So I think we've got to really evolve our thought process, educate your board and your membership that the need to change, right? And if we stay in that old school thought of we need to work a lot of hours and make low pay, guess what? You're going to be left behind. Good luck finding some staff these days. We're bringing a lot of great, like Brian said at Penn State, we're back to 40, 45 people going into the program. So we're seeing a lot of great growth coming into our industry. How do you retain that? Right. So when I was at Penn State, we had 45 individuals start the program. I think we graduated with 13, and I think there might be 4 of us left in the industry. Right. So that's a low figure. I'm going to share again another slide here. So I started doing a lot of different, let me share this here. Started doing more research, right? And there's a company called Handshake, and I'm not sure if you've ever looked at it, but if you haven't, go onto their website. Handshake, they look at trends, and what I found, what can we learn from Gen Z and the data? There are 6 things that they say they want from their job. And why is this important to us? I mean, you're hiring people right out of college. If you're trying to attract younger people, this is what they say. 76% of undergrads say guaranteed hours or job security would make them more likely to apply to a job. 80% are already thinking about retirement, and 65% say they wouldn't take a job that didn't offer retirement benefits. 22% of undergrads see student loan repayment support as essential, and another 51% say it's important. I mean, 73% are looking at that student loan payment. We know what college costs, and those costs have gone up through the roof. And I looked into this. Employers are allowed to, by law, offer $5,250 a year in student loan repayment assistance. Now, I never thought about this, but this could be one way that you can help try to attract new people, is if, it doesn't all have to be salary, but can you help pay off their student loan? They're making this investment for you and, for their career. Can you attract somebody by doing that? Number two, and these are in no particular order. Number two is opportunities to develop their skills. They want to keep learning and they want to grow, right? So are they coming in, or are they staying at your place of employment? Are they doing the same thing day in, day out? Or are you trying to develop them as a golf professional, and teach them as much as you possibly can, and give them opportunities to even learn more, right? Educational seminars, going to the PGA show, taking classes down there. What are you doing, and are you paying for that? Because 50% say tuition reimbursement for those types of classes is very valuable learning and development benefit. Number three, in-person work with plenty of flexibility. 70% of undergrads are more likely to apply to a job that offers schedule flexibility. Obviously, we can't really do remote work, but we can offer them flexibility in their schedule, right? So when I was at Caves, my younger brother was getting married. They gave me 2 days off, the day before his wedding and the day of the wedding. I worked in Baltimore and the wedding was out in Pittsburgh. I had to leave the reception early because I had to go back and open up the next day. And that was just, it was just what we had to do. I felt so awful, and I missed many weddings over the years. And why should we have to miss that, right? It's important. You need to make that important to you and important to your staff. A sustainable work-life balance. And you look at those percentages there, it's trending that way, right? You need to be able to provide a work-life balance, or else you may not be able to attract some people. So we just posted a job and it shows a 5-day work week. Before we do the schedule, we ask our staff, what days do you need off? And they provide it back, and it's like working a jigsaw puzzle, right? A lot of times you say yes and sometimes say no. And what I do is I prioritize what they're asking off for, right? So if everybody's asking for a weekend off, if somebody's going to a family member's wedding, that takes priority over some of the other requests. Number 5, values alignment. So, I don't like to bring politics into work at all. I think it's can be too combative, but hey, can you do something socially, right? Can you offer volunteer programs within your community? Can you volunteer time at a food bank? And maybe that's important to a younger person. And it should be important to all of us, right? And do they see that value in your club? Are you doing stuff like that? And then number 6, competitive pay and salary transparency. 72% of undergrads say a high starting salary makes them more likely to even apply to a job. And just so you know, that high salary is in the $75,000 to $85,000 mark. And they also kind of want to know the salary bands, which is the minimum to maximum they can make in that role. So where can they grow to, right? They want to know what that potential is. While I don't think any of us got in this industry to get rich, I still have 2 daughters, right? I need to pay their college tuition. And FYI, Brian and Eric, she just got accepted at Penn State main campus. So I've got to pay for the college tuition. And yeah, we don't necessarily need to be rich and have 2-3 houses, but we also need to be able to make a comfortable living and be able to afford a house and save for retirement, right? The last chart I'm going to share, this shows the salary increase with consumer price index, the inflation percentage. And back in 2001, I started at Caves. The entry-level assistant salary was $30,000. If that increased each year by just CPI alone, next year that entry-level position should, at a minimum, be making close to $55,000. And that's at a CPI increase, right? So think about what you're doing at your clubs when you're providing raises for the following year. Is it just a standard, hey, no more than a 3% raise? Well, if it's a standard percent every year, you're potentially falling behind. My thoughts are it should be a CPI at a bare minimum. If you're bringing staff back to your club, they should be able to live next year as the same that they did this past year at the bare minimum. So you need to increase that all wages by at least the CPI. And then if you want to give an increase of pay, it should be like a CPI plus a 1% or 2% or 3%. So those are the things I think that we need to be thinking about to help retain staff. And I think it's very important, right? How many of you work at clubs that basically it's the same percent increase every single year? And I'm going to challenge you as well. If you had a starting salary for an entry-level position at, let's just say $50,000 5 years ago, are you still at $50,000 today? Or have you increased that by at least CPI? I think it's important that 5 years from now, that person's getting the same opportunities that you were paying, 5 years ago with your staff. And I think for me, I had to really look in the mirror and go, man, I think I was actually part of the problem. And I'm going to explain how I think that working for the TPC network and corporate, we worked a lot of hours. And then I went and worked for Dennis Asher. Dennis Asher at Caves Valley, he worked for Bill Strasbaugh back at Columbia Country Club as an assistant. We all know the name Bill Strasbaugh. But he would tell us stories that, we worked 6 days a week, open to close, and on our day off, that's when we played in tournaments, but not until after we went in and watered all the batteries of the carts. So we were playing golf with battery acid, and that's kind of the mentality that he had, and that's kind of the mentality that I took. I said, this is what you need to do in the golf industry, is you need to be there all the time, right? The members need to be able to come in and greet their guests and introduce their guests to you as the director of golf or head professional. And what I started realizing was I don't need to be there all the time. Sometimes you're just there just to be there. And that's not, you got to understand when you need to be there, when not. And I will tell you, this year is the first year I've worked more weeks where I've just worked 5 days a week instead of 6 or 7. And it's one of the first years where I really can say I'm not burnt out at all. I come in fresh, and the members, they're not missing me when I'm not there, right? Because I've trained my staff to be able to take over, and the members know that, hey, I'm at my daughter's volleyball games, or I'm at a travel tournament. Those things are important to me, and you need to make that important to your staff to be able to go to those things. And if they know that that's important to you and you're looking out for your staff, believe me, they'll go through a wall for you. So how can you help create change? We need to promote the employee's value to the club, right? How many times do you talk to members or the board or your owners and say, what's the number one asset? And they quickly answer the golf course. One of the things, Tom Fazio at Caves, he was given a talk to the members. He designed Caves Valley, and Dennis asked a question. He goes, hey Tom, what makes a club great? And without hesitation, Fazio said, that's easy. It's the people, right? It's the members and it's the staff. And you need to attract good members to your club. And how do you do that? By making your employees the number one asset at the club, right? They are your number one asset because they're the ones that are providing the service to your members. They're the ones that are making sure that that golf course, that great golf course you have, is kept in great shape. They're the ones making sure that the dinners are cooked and served properly, right? So you need to be investing in your staff, and we need to be promoting that to our members and board. And believe me, I've really tried to be doing that. And what I found is a lot of the members are still in that old school thinking of, you as golf professionals need to work a lot of hours. You know, you don't get paid much, you pay your dues. So there's a lot of education here that needs to happen. I would also say talk to your staff and listen to them, and even talk to your previous staff. Who's worked for you? If they've gotten out of the business, what did they like? What didn't they like? You need to learn what your staff wants. We had a conversation, and I know Jim Smith Jr. in his last presentation talked about his staff works 4 days a week, open to close, and then has 3 days off. I talked to my staff about that. They wanted to work 5 days and work 8 to 9 hours. But if they wanted to work 4 open to close days, we would have done that as well. So talk to them, listen to them, you know, and they can help you solve that issue. Evaluate your own situation. Do you feel like your staff is making enough? Do you think that they can fairly afford to live where they are? Are they going paycheck to paycheck, right? I strongly feel like they should be able to make enough to where they can be saving for their retirement. They can be saving for kids' college educations, and then still have enough to pay for all their bills and still even go into a vacation, right? That's quality of life. That's that work-life balance. And you need to provide data to the section and national levels, right? So when you see that compensation survey come out, when you see the operational survey come out, fill those out, because your answers are extremely crucial. We need accurate data to be able to push through the narrative that, hey, our salary at our club needs to go up, right? You need that data. You need to promote flexibility and job stability. I do see, if you go on to PGA career links, you're going to see a lot of jobs, especially seasonal positions, right? It's tough to find somebody seasonal. And I think, honestly, because they're looking for job stability and they're looking to not have to move every 6 months. If they're moving, you really need to make sure that it's in their best interest. You need to almost be paying a little bit more for that. And then, you know, educate your clubs that employee continuity is extremely important, right? So when you're providing service, if they have continuity in who they're seeing at the club, they know they're going to get the same service or better service than what they would get if they're meeting somebody for the first time. And I feel like we're always in a rush when we get assistants to be looking at what they're going to do next, right? I will say not all assistant golf professionals want to be you. Not all of them want to be a head professional. Not all of them want to be a director of golf. Some of them are living their best life being an assistant golf professional because maybe they don't want to make the decisions that you have to make. Maybe they don't want to have those tough conversations that we have to have all the time, right? So challenge that thought. Maybe if somebody says, hey, I'm happy here, right? And they're doing a fantastic job for you. Is that the worst thing in the world? I mean, I think it's actually great. It helps with continuity. I'm not trying to push anybody out, but I'm not trying to hold them back either. That's important. You need to be talking to them and understanding what they're wanting. We need to help shift that mindset that we don't work 70 to 80 hours. It's not that we can't, and it's not that we don't during tournament weeks, but that expectation of a weekly 70 to 80 hours isn't realistic. You know, we need to encourage our members and boards to understand that family time is important for our well-being, you know, and for the basically so that we're not burnt out at the end of each year. That's a classic thing. Can you build value at your club for your employees, right? So can you allow employees to work out in your club gym if you have one at off-peak times, or help pay for their club membership at a gym down the road? Can you have your chef conduct seminars on how to cook healthy, right? And can you bring that type of value? Can you have your golf professional staff provide clinics? Can you do team building experiences away from the club? You know, we did a boat cruise and a bonfire on the on the on the beach. You know, that type of stuff is pretty cool. Can you possibly help with childcare costs? You know, if somebody has a child, those costs are going through the roof. Can you bring in professionals and do educational seminars at your club? One of the things I forgot to mention in one of those slides, but a high percentage of the younger generation wants to be taught how to properly take care of their finances, right? So do they know how to manage? Do they know how to save for retirement, or basically how to divide up their paycheck? Can you bring in somebody to talk about that? So can you bring that value to the club for employees? And then honestly, share success stories, right? Joe Dowdy's on the call. Share your success stories with what you're doing that you found that your employees like a lot, right? We need to share stories so that other clubs can go, wow, that's an awesome thing, and let's bring that to our club, right? So the more we share those types of success stories, the more we put that out there, I think that's only going to help us tremendously and help your staff. And lastly, I'm going to talk about, you know, how do I think that the section and the PGA, you know, national can help us? I've talked a lot about this with Joe and Jeff and even Brian at Penn State, but we need to focus a lot on retention strategies, right? So I think we focus a tremendous amount of our attention on how to bring people into the industry, but we need to focus on how to retain those great professionals. How can we make that one of our big items, right? So John Lindert, who just retired from being, or he was our president, he said over half of the PGA members got their PGA status before 1995. Over half of Class A members got their status in 1995. So that was alarming to me. That means that the old school, they're still working, and the younger have potentially left the industry for a better work-life balance, better compensation. I do think that if we conduct exit interviews, we can find out a lot of those answers and help provide great data to you. That's one of the things on the employment committee we're going to be talking about. But I think we all understand why they've left. But if we understand and can show that data to people and show what they're making now in their industries, why they left the industry, we can help promote change. Because you can't really change something if you don't know what the problem is. And I think we all think we know what the problem is, but we don't have that data to support it. And engage with the PGM schools like Brian. You know, again, I said we started with 45 people and 13 graduated, right? So what happened to those other 32 people? Why did they leave the program? Did they not like their internships? Were they working for the wrong people? Did they get a glimpse into our industry and not like it? We don't know. So we need to engage and also do those types of exit interviews there. And then, just promote. We have to promote it at our club. You have to talk about it. You need to gather some data, and, maybe we can take some data from the section and national and help provide that story, so that you can take some powerful information to your board and your general manager and start promoting some change within the industry. I think all of you, as well as me, I love this industry. I can't even think about what else I would do if I wasn't in the golf business. But I can't say that I didn't have many times where I was so burnt out. I was like, man, what am I doing to myself, right? What am I doing to my family? And after change in the past couple of years, it's really turned into much more enjoyable at home, I would say. And maybe we can take advantage of PGA Frisco. They're wanting people there. Maybe we can come up with some way where pro can take 7 influential members or board members or owners and go there, and while we're playing golf, maybe there's a way that we can have somebody talk to us about how the business is changing and how as a board or ownership, how you need to start changing your thought process so that we can retain great golf professionals in this industry. But that's really all I've got. I know it's a lot to digest. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to me. As you can see, past year and a half, it's been really on my mind, and I've been passionate about this, and I'm going to keep working with the section staff and see what we can do to help provide some data to kind of arm you with some good info. But thank you all. Anybody have any questions?
Great stuff, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kevin, this is Thomas from Indian Valley. Thanks for taking time to put that together. One of the things that I struggle with, I think, is that the phrase "the squeaky wheel gets the oil" comes to mind. I like to think that my team and I do a fantastic job in the golf operation, and we're in the same boat with rounds increasing from that 20,000 to 30,000 rounds. And we're actually 2 or 3% over this year with this fantastic fall we're having. So we're going to have the busiest year ever. When I go to a board meeting or I walk into a golf committee meeting and talk about the staff and talk about, increasing levels and getting more, some of the times I get the answer back is like, well, you guys do such a great job. And it's almost like, well, the kitchen's getting bad reviews, so they're hiring more chefs, or, the maintenance department says, oh, well, we can't keep up with picking the leaves up, so we need to hire more people. I'm not willing to obviously sacrifice the operation, and I'm just as old school as you are, not quite as old, but just as old school as you are with
Thanks, Tom.
Anytime, with the, kind of mindset. And I love what I do, and I love being here the amount of time I'm here. And I've been fortunate to never have to go work a day in my life. But
yeah,
can you speak with that and see, one of the strategies I've been trying to implement is a little bit of when members go away to play. One of the questions I ask is, oh, how many staff members did you see? Trying to get them to get that thought of, maybe we are understaffed, which we are understaffed, that type of thing. And it's been a difficult year at Indian Valley with some challenging stuff going on, but the staffing wise, but the, any thoughts on that, or how do you kind of change that narrative that, we're doing well, so we might not need more?
Yeah. So, when they go to other courses, right, they come back and say, yeah, I want to be Marion. Well, I'd like to be Marion too. I don't have a top 10 golf course though. That's really where the Jim Smith Jr., that payroll solution. Have you heard of that or that equation?
Yeah, I think that, we're definitely in the low end of it. Right.
Right.
But I would challenge, and I don't know if Jim's on the call or not, but I've had this conversation with Jim, is that, our service level is better than what the number comes out, right? Because we have a dedicated team and we have people that are killing themselves to do a good job. Now it's right up to the point where we don't have those people in place anymore, right? So, losing those people or buying in, but my whole mindset and my whole culture is we build a family. We do it, and we're going to run through walls for each other, like you said. So, if somebody has to, work away or, that type of thing. And, we had a unfortunate situation where Andy Kistler passed away this year, and we haven't replaced Andy yet this year, and we're close on doing so. But, I had 5 staff members walk in the office and say, hey, Thomas, we're going to bust our butts, for you and, to make up for what we're missing from Andy, which is awesome. But that just shows the board that we can do it with one less person.
Yeah, but how long can you sustain that?
Right. You can't.
So talk about the sustainability of that.
Right.
And, I think anybody can do for a short amount of time, right? You do what you need to do, right? But if now all of a sudden that becomes the thought process for the next year, there's no way, right? So I would talk to your staff. I would learn from them and share their stories to the board or those people and just say, listen, if this keeps up, I'm losing this person, this person, this person, right? You can't sustain. So before, your staff member passed away, unfortunately, we were working our staff this many hours, right? They have a good work-life balance. And I would put it into human terms, right? How would you like it if your child was now expected to work that many hours and for this much pay? You got to throw that human element into it. And I would also find out what the average apartment cost is and do that. Find out what that equation comes to, right? Because if you lose one of your staff, that's what you're going to have to pay to replace that at the bare minimum, right? That's at the bare minimum. So try to figure out some data. And again, I can share a lot of the articles that I found and that you can share that with them. This isn't just you, right? I think a lot of times when we start talking about pay and benefits, what I found is they feel like it's a selfish thought that you're thinking about yourself. Well, you're thinking about your team, right? And you're thinking about how can I keep this team, retain this team? And it's not by continuing to work them this many hours for that much pay, right? So I think you have to bring that human story into it.
That's really good. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, because anybody can do it for a short amount of time, but it's not sustainable.
Hey, Kevin, Joe Missimer here.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for a lot of the data that you collected. It was kind of eye-opening. And it's nice we have Joe Dowdy on the line here. And the formula that you created to say how much you should be making in your area as to compared to how much we actually are making in our area. And I wonder if you've passed that formula on to national so that they can look at that data more so to present when a job comes open what the employee should be making and not what the actual rate is.
Yeah, so I had not yet shared that. I've shared a lot of stuff with Joe and Jonathan Gold over the last few months, but we're going to be in the employment committee talking about a lot of that stuff and looking at some of those equations and what data can work for you on a on a basis. Because I think a lot of our salaries are way off to some of those equations, and it was kind of eye-opening how far off we were. But thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. And yes, all that stuff is now being shared today, but in that form. But yeah, and I've also had some conversations with National on a lot of this stuff about retention, and I would say at the national level, a lot of their focus. I'm not saying I got pushback, but and Joe may be able to speak to this, but I think it takes a lot to do these exit interviews that I think are important. I think there's a good way that we can come up with a kind of a survey and get some of that basic information. It doesn't need to be a long survey, but it's putting that data and getting those data points. I don't think it would be hard. It's just getting the people to fill it out, right? So, Joe, do you know how many people fill out that compensation survey each year out of the almost 800 staff members we have in the section?
In our section, we're about a little over 60%.
60%. Yep.
And that's with good effort.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's with a lot of emails, right? I know Michael Caldwell in our district was sending a lot of emails in the section. So I would challenge everybody to provide that data so that we have better data to look at.
Hey guys, Scott Riley. One of the things, and Kevin, thanks so much. This is awesome stuff. One of the things that we saw here in Philly, and really when I was working in Boston as well, is something for golf professionals to think about. And the way that we've changed is the assistants that are seasonal and transient, we recognized in COVID, I didn't want assistants leaving to go to Florida for fear of not being able to get them back, timing wise, and things like that. And that had me go to my golf committee and my board and say, hey, look, I need more money because I need to keep these guys year round, and we can't lose them to Florida. And that's one of the ways I think that our industry's changed for this timing of assistance in the Northeast and across the North going, north south. So it's something to keep in mind for us, and to try to sell that if you're looking for some extra funds, to say, hey, look, I don't want the assistants going, but we need to be able to get them more money. And it's another way to think about it. And kids, I call them kids, but entry level assistants coming out of college, and it's a great experience for them to go north south. But just as you get a little bit older in your career there, that's a 23, even now 24. The rent, as you expressed, it's too much. I mean, going to Florida is maybe break even right now.
Yeah.
And we really gotta cultivate these younger assistants to educate them and try to find a way to get them enough experience, but at the same time, help them financially, because that they need that experience to go and see other places, but it's really tough for them to be able to make enough.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Unless you can provide housing and make it easy for them to do a north-south, it's becoming a lot harder. We used to get interns here at Penn State, and quite frankly, we're not able to afford the housing for 2 to 3 months in the summer anymore. It's through the roof. And you have to have housing. And to your point, we used to have 2 assistants that were year round, and then 1 was a seasonal. And I went to the board and talked about having all 3 be year round. And what I said was we would work the outside staff as well. Our outside staff, we're lucky down here. We get a lot more retired individuals, so they're looking to take off during the winter time. So I went to the assistants and said, listen, this is a way I can do it, but you need to be outside, doing all the carts, all the clubs, all the driving range, all that stuff. And they all bought in. So we were able to keep all 3 year round. So we have 0 seasonal, but it's getting harder and harder for sure. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments, questions? If you want any of that data, just reach out to me. I'll share it with Cassandra and Matt, and they can get that to you. But again, that was just data that I had found. I'm sure you can find a lot better data, and it's out there too. Don't just look at the golf industry itself. Look at the hospitality, and look at the restaurant. We're all in this together, and make some changes at your club and all the different departments. But, all right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Cassandra, anything else?
Nope, that's all. Like Kevin said, if anyone has any questions from today, feel free to reach out to Matt or myself, and we can send you the recording if you need it, or any information from Kevin. So thanks again for hopping on.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep. You're welcome.